where the drones are located in a very spatial area on the Earth, similar to Mars. For instance, in a volcano area, in Hawaii, in an area where there is no vegetation and the morphology looks like Mars. So we will bring the drones there, and through this transatlantic remote piloting, they are able to operate in real time without GPS, the drones pretending they are on Mars.
You're listening to the Drone Radio Show podcast, the show about drones and the people who use them for business, fun, and research. Hosted by Randy Goers.
Hello, everyone. This is Randy Goers, and welcome to the Drone Radio Show podcast, episode 386. How will drones support NASA's mission to Mars? For that question, we head to Troy, Michigan, to speak with Giuseppe Santangelo, CEO and founder of Skypersonic. Skypersonic is a leader in the use of drones for industrial inspections and first response emergency situations. Their flagship product is the Skycopter, a drone with a tiltable video camera that is designed to work in extreme conditions and ultra-tight spaces. Skypersonic also invented the first ever worldwide civil real-time remote piloting system that allows piloting in first-person view of any drone located anywhere via the internet. Skypersonic is a subsidiary of Red Cat Holdings, a provider of drone-based products, services, and solutions for the enterprise, military, and consumer markets. Other companies within Red Cat Holdings include Teal Drones, Fat Shark, and Rotor Riot. In 2022, Skypersonic delivered to NASA the hardware and software for a rover and drone system that crew members of NASA's simulated Mars missions will use to remotely explore Martian-like terrain around Earth, all from their 1,700 square foot simulated Mars habitat at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. In the simulated Mars missions, crew members will spend 1 year living and working in the habitat at Johnson Space Center that has been designed and built to simulate life on the red planet. The Skypersonic drones and rover will be taken to an area on Earth that is similar to Martian terrain, such as a desert or mountainous region, where they'll be controlled remotely by crew members in Houston. The exercise is designed to test the ability of astronauts on Mars to remotely explore the planet with drones and rovers. Giuseppe is a mechanical engineer and has spent nearly all of his professional career in the aerospace industry. He is a part-time professor at Wayne State University and collaborates at Lawrence Tech University as adjunct professor for the UAV Artificial Intelligence and Space System Engineering courses. He has been a researcher and contract professor at the University of Catania in Italy in the Industrial Engineering Department. Giuseppe has been responsible for developing projects on behalf of the European Space Agency at Thales Alenia Space in Turin. He participated in the design and development of several equipment for the International Space Station with NASA. In this episode of the Drone Radio Show, Giuseppe talks about Skypersonic, its innovative Skycopter, the simulated Mars mission, and the role that the company will play in providing drones that will one day fly on Mars. But before we hear from Giuseppe, I want to thank those of you who have been supporting my funding campaign. Whether it's $1, $100, or much more, you can help defray the cost of production and keep the podcast going and growing. Go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And by the way, if you have a great story on the use of drones that you'd like to share in a podcast, contact me at randy@droneradioshow.com. Now let's learn how drones are being developed to fly on Mars with Giuseppe Santangelo of Skypersonic. Let's pick up the interview where I asked Giuseppe to introduce himself.
My name is Giuseppe Santangelo. I am the president and CEO of Skypersonic. Skypersonic is a company that I found 7 years ago, more or less, and now is part of Red Cat Holdings. Red Cat Holdings is a company, Nasdaq company, public company that is full dedicated on drones development. Drones for defense applications, for space, for government application, and in particular for really special operations that needs a special tool, as a Skypersonic provides. Skypersonic, in fact, produce this Skycopter, which is a drone able to sneak and fly in a very small confined space where there are a lot of dangerous things that you don't want to expose, or you don't want to have a person going that. And so you prefer to have a robot, in this case, a drone.
Giuseppe, before we talk about the Skycopter, I want to learn more about the company. Tell us about Skypersonic. What does the company do?
The main purpose of Skypersonic is to produce a product that can support the people in a very special and complex operations. Obviously, we're talking about drones, so we produce drones. In our case, this unit called Skycopter, we produce since 2018-17. It's a unit designed for work in a confined space. So it flies where other drones cannot fly. So I mean, inside a pipe, a sewage, a nuclear plant, all the area that are inside, indoor, they're very difficult to reach, very difficult to operate inside. We can send this drone. So this drone is capable to fly either under 100 meters underground or in a very tough condition like a radiation environment, radiated environment, in other chemical stuff. So the drone is able to fly, obviously supported by a pilot.
Right off, the Skycopter is unlike most drones. It flies inside a cage. Tell us about its design.
Basically, to imagine a Skycopter, you have to imagine a ball, a little bigger than a basketball, 14 inches, the total diameter. And this all enclosed in a skeleton, basically like a ribs that goes through the sphere and enclosed inside the props, the propellers, the flight controllers, the cameras, and all things. So this is a protection that allows the drone to bump everywhere, to be able to support even some crashes. Also because this spherical cage is able to roll and resist to the bumping, since it's elasticity that support the flight thanks to the flight controller. To fly the unit inside a very confined space environment, there are other elements you got to take in consideration. First of all, motors have to be completely enclosed, because you don't want to have any dust going inside the motors, or maybe critical dust that can inject or can create a spark. So the motor is full enclosed. Then the transmissions, the link between the drone and the operator, have to be very special, very particular, because you got to penetrate walls. That's why we have a very unique system that is able to go in a very low frequency with some kind of a standard system that support the transmission, even the drone is really far or not connected to the pilot. And besides that, we are able also to operate this unit in absence of GPS. So in a GPS denied condition, so where you don't have any satellites and you are not able to locate the location of the drone. So the drone have to operate also in this kind of environment without any satellite sensor support.
Does it have any autonomous capabilities?
No, our vision is to have always a pilot from the other side. So the drone has capability to support the flight in a sense that there is an automatic system to recover the flight, to be stable, to stabilize the flight condition. But you still need to have a pilot that is flying the unit in a first person in view, in FPV. In this sense, the full control is of a pilot. Even the drone is assisting in such a very complicated situations where you don't want to have, the drone crashing or losing that. So the drone is capable to support itself, but is always wait for a control by a pilot.
Can you give us some examples of how the drone can be used?
Yes, there are many applications. Let's start from an industrial application. So sometimes we inspect industrial environment in decommissioning, so ready to be completely unmounted. And so the drone sneak inside a manhole, and the drone can make all the inspection with this beautiful camera on board with a very strong illumination system, able to get up to 10,000 lumens, even in a completely darkened situation. We inspected recently, not us directly, but our customers, sewage areas that are really very complicated. We're starting to work with the police department in Italy, in Europe, in Spain, and also in the United States. They are using this copter for law enforcement applications where there is some situation you don't want to expose an officer. You could use the drone inside a mall or a barricade person inside an area you don't want to expose any officers there. You can use the drone. Another recent application we're doing is to go in a very radiated commercial nuclear system to be able to evaluate and to censor the level of radiation, because the drone is capable to bring a payload like a radiation sensors and evaluating the dose there to see if it's safe to having human going there or not.
According to your website, the Skycopter can be flown via long-range, real-time remote piloting. What does that entail?
We have a transatlantic remote piloting system, which means we are able to fly the unit in real time from anywhere to anywhere in the world. So we could have the pilot located, let's say, in New York, and the drone's operation are in Alaska. And we have a stable connection between the pilot and the drone through internet. So it's not a point-to-point, but it's going to the regular, let's say, internet world, but by using a very special algorithms, able to create the shortest path to reach a latency between the command and the fly drone lower than 100 milliseconds. For those who are familiar with drones and flying with drones in first-person view, you know that if the latency between the control and the drone reaction is greater than 100 milliseconds, the drone is becoming lazy to be operated. So doing this through internet, 1,000 of miles away from between the pilot and the drone, it's very hard. So we worked a lot to create a stable connection by using regular 5G connection, LTE or internet, that can sustain a very low latency system, even in transoceanic flight, lower than 100 milliseconds. In this case, the pilot is able to see the video from the drone, the camera on the drone in real time, and operate the control with the telemetry in distance without any assistance of the GPS, which is important. So the drone is full in control of the pilot, even there is no GPS. In this case, we can fly even inside a cave or inside a tunnel. Even the pilot is thousands of miles away from the drone.
I know Skypersonic manufactures the drones for sale, but do you also fly missions for your customers?
Generally, we sell the unit, we sell the drone, we support the customer in training. Sometimes we train the customer in a long distance. Maybe I can mention why we got this transatlantic remote piloting. We did that because during the COVID time, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we couldn't provide training to our end customer. We usually send pilots to the customer to explain how the drone works, how to perform the inspection. During the pandemic, we couldn't send anybody anywhere. So we invented this technology. And so we trained the customers. We had customers in the Middle East flying the unit located in US from Middle East or from Italy or from Europe. So we created this technology to be able to train the people even in a pandemic condition where anybody can fly from anywhere. Now we are going to a direction that we can provide the entire system to a customer, and the customer is able to locate his unit wherever he wants, and keeping the pilots in the central control room. Think about a big energy plants. They have multiple locations where you have to fly drones. You can place the drones in their crib inside the plant, many different locations, and you can centralize the full operations from a control room where you have all the monitors and the control gamepad or whatever, the radio controller. So it can sustain multiple inspections at the same time in multiple locations at the same time.
Let's shift to the NASA simulated Mars mission, which Skypersonic is a part of. Can you give us a brief overview of the simulated Mars mission?
NASA is preparing for the human manned mission on Mars. That will happen for sure, maybe in 10, 15, 20 years. So the trend is to go on this planet, and having the human on the planet will be much better instead of just automated missions. But before to go there, it's super important to test and evaluate all the technologies on the Earth before to send the humans on Mars. So there is a mission in NASA named CHAPEA, which means that they are confining a crew of 4 astronauts in a Martian habitat created inside Johnson Space Center. These 4 people will simulate along 1 year confined inside this habitat without any possibility to go out or even to communicate with any person unless they are using the latency of 20 minutes between Mars and the Earth. So they're going to simulate in this mission inside this habitat. And it's called analog because it's analog to the real mission, but it's performed on the Earth. They will perform also some extravehicular activities or inspection by using rovers and drones.
What is Skypersonic's role in the project?
We are providing to NASA the hardware necessary to do this work. So a rover and drones, our Skycopters. And also we provide to NASA this transatlantic technology to be able to have this crew operating drones from their habitat, confined inside, where the drones are located in a very spatial area on the Earth, similar to Mars, where the morphology of our planet is similar to the red planet. For instance, in a volcano area, in Hawaii, in an area where there is no vegetation and the morphology looks like Mars. So we will bring the drones there, and through this transatlantic remote piloting, they are able to operate in real time without GPS, the drones pretending they are on Mars.
In July of 2022, the hardware and software was proven when NASA personnel stationed at the Johnson Space Center controlled the Skypersonic drones and rover on a Martian-like environment of Mount Etna, an active volcano thousands of miles away in Italy. Not only was the surface of the volcano like that of Mars, but there is no GPS signal on Mount Etna, which gave NASA personnel insight into how the technology would perform on a Martian surface. Giuseppe, can you tell us about the tests and what was learned?
We did a validation of the technology with the people on NASA last July 2022 on Monte Etna, which is the tallest volcano in Europe, about 9,000 feet, where was the perfect condition to simulate this. First of all, we demonstrated it was working pretty well. So we were able to operate drones and the rover from the United States. We needed to find the best internet connection over a mountain. So as you can imagine, there is nothing. So there is no people. So there is no internet connection like the cellular phone. So we used a satellite connection. So internet via satellite. So we reached the satellites via internet, and we were able to pilot the drone through the satellite connection from the astronauts. Obviously through internet, but the link between the drone and internet was through satellite connection.
When NASA actually puts people on Mars, how will you achieve the same sort of connectivity? I mean, there's no internet on Mars.
Yes, but you don't need to bring thousands of computers or servers there. You can have a network built there, just point to point, to manage the connection between the astronauts and the drones. And maybe you can triangulate that through satellites connection or through orbiter. So that will be possible as well. And Mars doesn't have a very big atmosphere. You can orbit also lower orbit compared to the Earth, because our lowest orbit on the Earth is about 300, 200 kilometers. Because lower than that, you have a big drag, and the drag will make the orbiters paralyzed. On Mars, you can fly lower, let's say, because there is thinner atmosphere.
What sort of challenges do you envision in designing a drone that can fly in the Martian atmosphere?
As well as many other companies are starting to think about extraterrestrial drones application. We already started feasibility study and we demonstrated works to have a stratospheric drone because the Martian atmosphere it's similar to the high altitude atmosphere on the Earth. So the density on the ground on Mars is about 20 miles altitude on the Earth. So if you are able to fly at 20 miles of altitude on the Earth, you will be certainly fly on Mars. And since on Mars there is already a small helicopter that demonstrated that it's feasible to fly over Mars, the challenging is to be able to fly in a very thin atmosphere. So spinning props faster, which is basically the way to keep the thrust enough, even when you have a lower density atmosphere. Pay attention to avoid to reach the speed of sound on the rotational tangential velocity on the props. So the props have to be designed in considering this environment. We tested successfully the drone flying a very high altitude, and we're going to perform tests in a vacuum chamber that is simulating completely the condition on Mars to demonstrate the flyability of this drone inside a vacuum chamber. And then we can move forward.
Does the range and temperature on Mars pose a big challenge?
Not really. So basically, Mars have temperature goes minus 70, minus 80 to some degree in Celsius. So it's very cold there, but not cold to a point that you are not able to use technology. For instance, the temperature at the 10 kilometers of altitude on our Earth is about minus 50. So on Mars, the conditions from the temperature point of view are similar. From the density, no. Obviously, we have a very thin atmosphere over there, but there are a lot of dust. The dust is a problem. There are some dust storms that could cause a lot of problem on the equipment. We have to be aware about that. That's why also NASA is studying a lot through the Perseverance and Spirit, all the equipment already sent on Mars, how the meteorological condition can support a permanent establishment of a human habitat there.
When is the simulated Mars mission scheduled to begin?
The official beginning will be in 2023, I believe middle of the year, May, June. We started already to create the drones that we delivered our drones and our rover to them. We trained the NASA people. They created their habitat. And I believe they're going to start the project for 1 year. Those people will be confined in this habitat. And then they will circle with another team the year after and then another year after to collect a lot of data points to see how this project could work.
The Skycopters that you're providing to the mission, are they generally the same size and configuration as those that you provide for commercial use?
We modify a little bit. We created a sort of a Skycopter called a long range because basically our unit is designed to fly indoor. In this case, we're going to fly outdoor, except for some lava tubes simulation. We're going to primarily fly outdoor. So we modified a little bit the drone, removing the cage surrounding because we don't need outside, and increasing a little bit the endurance, making a little bigger props to have more endurance on outside.
And do you know where you'll be flying the drones for the simulation?
All the locations are not yet full defined. We have about 10 different locations, and NASA is in charge to decide where to go. Basically, we delivered them. All the unit will support wherever they want to go. We are able to operate from wherever. For sure, Etna, maybe Mount Etna is still a location because we tested and that works fine. But again, we are not in charge to decide where to go. We're just following what NASA decides.
Will the drones be deployed for an extended period of time in each of the locations, or are the missions intended to be short?
Timing of the missions, really don't know exactly the number of days because it's up to NASA to decide. We provided them the technology and everything, but logically, I'm assuming that the endurance of the operation will take a few days because you need some time to get there, to set up the stuff, and then the basic operation can endure a while. But I'm thinking a week or a couple of weeks per mission. I don't know how many missions they're targeting every year. It's up to them again.
Let's shift gears. Why did you start Skypersonic?
Before to become, the founder of Skypersonic, I come from Italy. I was a CEO of a mid-sized engineering company, about 1,000 employees. At that time, the company was smaller. We decided to open a branch in the United States, and I came here, decided to live in the United States. That was about 12 years ago. And then after 2 years, I decided why we don't create our own company. That's America. Everything is possible here. So let's make the dream true. And so I created the company. But the very beginning idea was not to create drones. But since I worked for the International Space Station and working on these components, I will do something on the space side. So I decided to create a sort of hypersonic commercial suborbital flight design. And that's why I called the company Sky Hypersonic. So hypersonic on the sky. But then after a few months, I started to work on this. I discovered it was very challenging. And I saw my son playing with a small ball, which is an exoskeleton. And I thought I can put a drone inside and I can have a drone flying and roll. So then I decided to create a patent and starting to work on that process. That was back in 2013, 14. And now we're here.
What do you attribute to the company's success?
For all the company's success is the perseverance of the target and never give up. And this primarily also for the team. I had a wonderful team together. You can do a very cutting edge technology. You can do something very, very unique. But if you're not conceited and you're very strong in not giving up, you will be successful before or later.
What advice would you give to other entrepreneurs?
First advice, if you want to work on the drones environment, so in this technology, we have to watch on the technology of the batteries, because that is the key. So we have to condense more energy in a less space and less volume, and so less weight. That's why we have drones. The drones were invented before, but there were not enough battery power to sustain their up in the air. From an entrepreneurial point of view, I believe that obviously you have to see in your mind what is your company 5 years ahead. If you have that image, you can carry everybody to that direction. But if you don't see that, if you don't have the clear idea what you want to do, maybe change your mind and do something different.
Earlier, you mentioned how you got the idea to start the company because of your interest in space travel. Now, today, your company is involved in a space mission. What does being part of the simulated Mars mission mean to you?
It means a lot in the sense that I always, from a kid, very passionate for the space and to see something beyond our planet. And now I see that is a very important moment for the humanity. We were in the past, after the moon landing in 1969 and ready to go, and then was calm for a while. Now I see a reminiscence of this. I'm seeing a new era for the space, and I'm glad to be part of these technologies that is growing. And I see in the next futures, we're going to see more and more, not only from the drones point of view, but also for the moon missions that are going to bring the human again in a couple of 2 or 3 years on the moon and so forth.
I'm curious, is it feasible for a drone to fly on the moon?
On moon, there is no atmosphere. So the only way to fly a drone, you have to have a drone without any props, but based on thrusters technology. So at the end of the day, it's possible, but it's not a drone in the conventional definition, but it's a drone composed by 4 thrusters, let's say.
What's next for Skypersonic?
Skypersonic part of Red Cat. Red Cat is a full concentrated in the developing drones in this moment to support the defense. We are living in a moment with the war in Ukraine is needed. The technology of drones is super used, very used in these areas. And then Red Cat with the wonderful company named Teal Drones is providing this technology. And meanwhile, Skypersonic is supporting Teal and also Red Cat in providing drones for military application or law enforcement application. So I see we're going to grow more also there. And also we're going to grow also in the space, since we're testing this stratospheric technology, not only for Mars, but also for stratospheric drones applications, because I see there a business, a market that could be helpful. Instead to use a satellites, you could use these kind of drones that are able to fly on the stratosphere, able to see the Earth for a higher altitude, for meteorologic tasks, or for surveillance or earth, ground, segment observations.
And for my final question, Giuseppe, what message would you like to leave regarding the future of the drone industry?
I think the future of the drones industry will be the miniaturization of the units. So we're going to have drones smaller and more efficiency with the artificial intelligence already is a fact. So they will be able to do their stuff by themselves. I don't believe on the human transportation of the drones, not for now. It's going to be still too complicated for liabilities and so forth. But I see unmanned vehicles that can do by themselves their inspections, their evaluation, and their stuff to support the industrial or critical infrastructures inspections.
That's it for episode 386 of the Drone Radio Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Giuseppe Santangelo of Skypersonic. I want to thank Giuseppe for taking the time to speak with me. If you want to learn more about Skypersonic or want to connect with Giuseppe, check out the webpage at skypersonic.net. If you want to learn more about the simulated Mars mission, go to nasa.gov. If you like the Drone Radio Show, please consider supporting the podcast with a small donation. The content is always free, but for as little as $1, you can help defray the cost of production. To donate, go to droneradioshow.com/donate. And thanks for listening. Your support means a lot to me, and I hope you'll listen to more episodes of the Drone Radio Show podcast to hear how others are using drones for business, fun, and research. For the Drone Radio Show, I'm Randy Goers.
This has been the Drone Radio Show podcast. More information on today's show can be found on our website at www.droneradioshow.com. If you're using drone technology for business, fun, or research and would like to share your experience on the show, please visit our website and fill out a guest appearance application. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media channels.